We are in the Plaza Mayor. Susan just told me something really interesting, that Villa, they pronounce it Villa, I pronounce it Villa de Leyva, is a huge wedding destination, that Colombia has agreements with some European countries, including and America, where they have these destination wedding packages. They arrange the whole thing. You too can come down here with 250 of your very bestest friends, and they arrange the flights, the hotels, the wedding, everything that goes into a wedding, and even counting the flights here, whether or not it's from Spain or someplace else in Europe, it's still probably a third of the price that it would cost back home. And that's basically the purpose of this church behind me. It is not the first church here. This is the big wedding destination church. Isn't that something? You learn something new every day when you travel. Church of Senora del Rosario was built between 1608 and 1665. It's famous for its balanced architecture and colonial art pieces.
The very first president of the New Kingdom of Granada, that was the name in Colombia before, his name is Andrés Díaz Venero de Leyva. Now, why is he important? Because he, as the first president, had a big problem. It's the fact that many of the Spanish soldiers that came here to do the conquest, they were out of a job. So what would they do if they didn't have any other trade? Of course, they became thieves. So this president decided we have to do something about it. What are we going to do? We are going to make a little town for as a retreat. And that's how Villa de Leyva comes to be. So it becomes the town for Spanish soldiers.
Actually, retired Spanish soldiers.
Exactly. And up to now, 60% of the population nowadays in Villa de Leyva, out of the 17,000 we have, are high-rank Colombian militaries.
That is the very first house ever built.
Mr. Juan de Castellanos
built that one.
Now, this is not only the first house built in this main square, but it's also the very first house in the whole country that is built with a double purpose. The first floor to be commercial and the second floor to be residential. Under the arcs, we find different restaurants, and we have a place to buy souvenirs as well. And the second floor is the mayor's office.
The mayor's up there on the top. You could always tell the amount of wealth of a person by the house. For instance, look at the height of the door, which meant that the person would enter riding his horse. And the horse quarters would always be in the center, surrounded by servants' quarters.
Coffee shop, maybe you were able to see it with wooden tables.
This was the residential area of his house. Remember how you just saw the Japanese pomegranate in Shikoku? Well, here we've got Colombian pomegranate.
Now, these are like olives. Oh. So you take these out. Obviously, you have to be really, really careful.
Yeah, with all the little pinprick things on them.
You peel them off, and then you squeeze them, and this oil comes out. That oil is good for lighting lamps.
You can see how it starts out. Flower, fruit. Colombia has some of the clearest water in the world. The water is filtered by these plants high up in the mountains. Their drinking water does not come from the rain. It comes strictly from the clouds gathered in the mountains, filtered by these little plants, and then comes on down, and of course goes to places in Bogota where it's filtered again. There's some of the fossilized stone and ammonite. The whole area they're walking are fossils. You just can't, because people walked on them too and everything, so there's a big piece right there. That's a big chunk.
The thing is that all Colombia. And I should probably
You see they're underground. This gives you a perfect example of the building materials used in this small little town. They would have used this, all the fossil rocks, more stones, mud on top of it, and then the whitewash on the outside. The thinking is that 1.5 million years ago, Villa de Leyva was an island surrounded by water in a lagoon because of the ammonites and seashells. This little tiny church is the original church built in the 1500s. The Claustro de San Agustin, a convent founded in 1594 by an Augustinian friar, the personal physician of Spanish King Philip II. The hanging balcony, typical Spanish architecture, and a little river.
who had the aqueduct. Spanish people tried it, but
You can see how the construction is covered by the whitewash or paint. Person collected all of these and then stuffed them in as decoration, all the different ammonites. This old house is a perfect example of how they just use the stones, all the fossilized stones that are all around the entire area. Susan said that people go for walks, you take a hammer with, break the rocks, and bring your fossils home.
can you see them?
Yeah,
In
yeah.
the middle of their, especially ammonites.